It's your boy Will My Craven coming to you with another video. Hit that share, like, and subscribe button. Would gladly appreciate it. Very grateful that you are here currently right now. I want to talk about something that is currently being spawned for me. Actually looking for something, although I didn't find it, but I ended up getting a message in my inbox this morning in regards to the grass withering, and it took me to a post that I made about the grass being greener on the other side, which was probably around 2017 and maybe 2018 at the most. I remember doing that from an apartment complex on the balcony, and yeah, I went trying to find it, but I found this post that I made, and then there was another one I may do a video on. But I found this post and I was reading it and was saying, man, this is still relevant today. It'll probably always remain relevant, simply for the mere fact that it states, every week on my timeline or in some group, it's always talk about cheaters. If I didn't learn anything out of being made to go to church, I learned cheaters don't care nothing about you. You can convince yourself of how important you are or what you are worth, but a cheater will cheat. If God supposedly if God is supposedly greater than you, what makes you think you are any better? I was made to go to Sunday school. Every month, at least once, I heard about his so-called people he picked being adulterous whores, going after other lovers. You heard how these people were God's chosen people and they acted arrogant to other nations, but they were unfaithful. This man made food fall out of the sky, burn romantic candles for them to travel and kill the rascals who made them slaves. Yup, even God was Captain Save a 304. After years of trying to fight for his people's love, they have a kid together named Jesus, and the same people disown their kid and kills his very namesake. Bruh, what makes you think any relationship you are in What makes you think any relationship you are in supposed to go the way you think? The one you are, the ones you aren't with are the ones who have more appreciation for you. Relationships are one of the hardest things in life outside of getting control over your emotions to handle. People more, people move on because they simply don't want to handle things. That means you shouldn't get into a relationship. No, that didn't sound right. That doesn't mean you shouldn't get into a relationship. You need to know the signs of a cheater. It won't take long. It didn't take them Hebrews long at all after God saved them from the Egyptians. Bruh, raised the waters, had them walking through a real-life shed aquarium. Them rascals made them another god as soon as they crossed over. People aren't no different than how the Hebrews did God when it comes to relationships. Yeah, of course, I don't like how I wrote some of that stuff back then, but whatever. But the fact of the matter is this actually it actually happens. Like, we were taught that if those who've gone to church for however long you've gone, at least a year, you've heard it at some point to where that men are supposed to love their spouses like Christ loved the church, and how the marriage life is supposed to be synonymous with God. There's a whole book, Hosea, about him choosing a wife named Gomer who cheats on him repeatedly, and this is why God tells him to go get him so he can illustrate how in relation they're doing him. So we've seen this a lot, and the mere fact that if people will willingly do this type of thing to God, What makes you think you're not any better? You're not. It's going to be some kind of trials and tribulations that happen through relationship, in which when I said this, someone right in the comments says, not trying to be funny, but this makes an optimistic person very discouraged about being in a relationship, in which she put quite a few quotation marks. And I fully understand why she would actually say that. And let's see what it is that I wrote. I wrote it to make people think and take things more seriously because people don't. It's all about them and they are worth. It's all about them and what they are worth and deserve. When they get that, they want more, and you'll never please them. Cheaters chase attention. Anyone who craves attention will leave you in some form of fashion if you stop giving it the way they want it. When you know this, you then have to recalibrate the person you want to be with. That person may not be what you always desired, and that's usually hard for people to come to terms with. Not everyone gets what they desire and it fits them. I also said it's to be expected. That's why I use the God analogy. Unfortunately, well, she says, sadly, it makes sense. But this is just a harsh reality, man. When you really go into that story where Moses comes in on the scene, and as I said, he turns the Red Sea into a shed aquarium where they can walk through on dry land and see the fishes and all that stuff on each side. For 400 years, they were in bondage and enslaved. So what tends to happen is this is why I just made the video last night about virgins. It's probably not posted yet, but I made the thing about virgins and them not having experiences. And anytime you have experiences that which is negative and hurtful and you're suffering, it's hard to have a relationship with that person. They're always going to be tending to one up. So anytime you get with a virgin, they have no idea what's going on. So from the gate, God chooses a people who's been wounded, busted, broken, and the whole nine. But the harsh reality is they kind of did it to themselves, because he starts off with Abraham, who didn't experience any of that. And then there comes Isaac and Jacob, and they don't really go through those kind of traumatic experiences. And there's just a long gap in between after Jacob comes on the scene, and then Joseph is introduced, and then now they're in Egypt, and Pharaoh dies, Joseph dies, and the whole thing changes. So change takes place, and now because there's someone different on the scene, which is why it's so important to keep relationship, to keep that one person, to always keep someone there, to have that common ground, to keep the relationship steady and consistent. But of course, there was a benefit from them to leave Egypt, and they come out with riches and all that stuff. There was ultimately a plan with it. But unfortunately, because they become wounded, they don't fully accept and trust God. No matter what he does, they go back to what they remembered during their bondage, which that previous relationship. So they had a long-lasting relationship with Egypt and how Egypt worshiped. So it's in them, which is why I say the whole virgin thing. Anytime they weren't virgins, they had a relationship with Egypt. So none of the laws and all that stuff comes on the scene yet, and the statues, none of that stuff exists while they're in bondage with Egypt. So they've adapted a whole different life with a whole different lover, which is why they wanted to go back to Egypt. Egypt became their lover. So when they finally get in this relationship with God, and they're having this relationship with God, It's always a constant want to go back to that first level because it was their first experience. They didn't experience God like Abraham did. When he goes up and he's having this full-fledged relationship, they don't know nothing about that. They have no clue, nothing about that. All the prophets and all that stuff comes way later. Their relationship that they have is not like Abraham. It's not like Jacob, who we see here. We read the story about the angel of the Lord touching the hollow of his thigh. We see all that. They don't have that experience. They're just praying that they know of, based on the stories, that would deliver them. This is what we know. So when it does actually happen, because it's not going the way that they want it to go, which is what we see now, a lot of my happiness. I did a video on that. It's up. Maybe if I'm capable, I'll hit the link, click it here. But my happiness, they show you what it is for the lover in a female form of it. The feminine form of it is once their happiness was not met, they were instantly and ready to go and serve another god. Which, this is why I say, what people don't like, these modern people just don't like it, but anytime you're married to a man, he's your Lord, he's your God. It's the same, so it goes hand in hand. You're following him. You're following a master. But, people hear that kind of stuff. They think, I'm not going to be a slave. Master teacher, master instructor. One who's in control of oneself. One who has great discipline. And one who has great discipline can lead. One who has great discipline and control of himself will make sure he makes decisions properly. So, with this whole thing, people are going to cheat simply because they've experienced something already in life and they have never fully been able to deal with it because they are taught how to properly deal with it. So they're going to always eventually go back. It's in their DNA and their whole mindset, spirit, the whole nine. It's just in them to go back because they had dealings with them first. No matter how you can come on the scene and give whatever it is you're going to give, they're going to still be tied to that first individual, which is why I said cheaters, ones who cheat, there's a deeper layer, which is why I always say you got to go and do your due diligence. You got to dig deep. This thing is always going to be deep. You think it's surface or you want stuff to be surface. No, there's a reason behind another reason why another reason. It's layered. It's layers. And when you peel back the layers, you'll get to the root of it. That's the whole objective to actually becoming perfect, which perfect being mature. That is one of the original definitions of perfect, mature, complete, fulfill. Which is why I did the other piece with the whole happiness thing. Fulfillment. Men seek fulfillment. That's how you mature. That's how you become perfect. This is why Job is labeled as a perfect man. Maturity. It takes a lot of maturity to go through that Job type experience. And it will mature you. It has nothing to do with what we now know perfect as is flawless. No. So, yeah. It's definitely a shame that this happens, but cheaters basically happen because they had a bad experience. And somewhere in that bad experience, when they got hurt, they start doing other things to seek to get rid of it. And the more you feed them good things from you, it's never in their mind that you are not the previous person. And they have no closure with the previous individual. That's why the Hebrews turned around and said, let us go back to Egypt. There was no closure there. They wanted to be gone, but because what was in them, what they experienced in Egypt was so embedded in them, they'd rather return to Egypt, even though they were getting miracles happen, food falling out of the sky, the sky being lit up at night, the enemy's being destroyed. Like, what more do you need? Like the whole time, even though we say, man, they spent all them years going through a journey to get to Canaan, the promised land, when it was a straight shot. Simply because the whole time they were being tested and trying to get that old ways up off of them, which is why those who experienced Egypt never made it to Canaan. He killed all those off. He killed all of them off that eventually made it to Canaan, because they had the old mindset. So that's a whole nother thing within itself. In a relationship, if you end up with a woman who has that, you're gonna have a hard time. So it tells you right there, like, why would you get into a relationship who's experienced all that? He had to kill all of the ones off who had experience with the old lover, which was Egypt, in order to get the new lover. And they had to teach them constantly. He was constantly teaching them his ways. That's why all of my videos are going to always deal with masculinity, and masculinity is teaching. They're all going to have something centered around it, because throughout the course of your life, you have to do an abundance amount of teaching, which is why the last video I did, which isn't up yet, I was dealing with the whole virgin thing. It is more easier to actually deal with a virgin because they are only been taught by their father. If this is the right manner of a virgin, the one who's had their father in their life, and she still has remained one. She's been taught by her father, so she's going to come in looking for someone else to teach her, as opposed to somebody who's been hurt. You've been hurt. You don't want to deal with that lesson. You still thinking about the hurt. Do you really think about, if you stick your hand on the stove, or if you've been cooking with grease, do you really think about the lesson? No, you don't. You still trying to get that burning sensation to stop. And it's so obvious, because we all have, if you've cooked and you've cooked some French fries or whatever it is with oil, when you've been burnt, you never ever forget it. Because the minute that grease get to popping, boy, I see memes on social media about that grease popping, and you instantly, like, you had that natural reaction, like, hey, I want no parts of that. You don't even think about actually not having that experience, or how can I minimize that experience. It's more so the fear of, like, man, I don't want no parts of that. And it practically happens a lot in the things that we do. But yeah, man, it's very unfortunate. It is very unfortunate. I think there was one other part I wanted to read on here. Oh yeah, there was an individual who said, this makes sense to me. She didn't want to read it. But what did I say here? Yet I will disagree on one thing. Cheaters can actually care. And my response was, no, you learned that in the womb. If you had siblings when you came out, they were made to share and let you have whatever. Then when you grow up, you are made to share. People don't revert to self first until heartbreak comes into play. She then uses the thinking emoji, and I respond with, you're generally made to share and be nice to others. Think about at work. It's team player. School was make friends and be nice. If you are a loner or to yourself, there's something wrong with you. If you are selfish, it's frowned upon. It's not until people are heartbroken that they hear, think about yourself first. Self never comes into play when people have kids. All you hear is, my kids come first. People put their kids over themselves. So a lot of times when people say, yeah, individuals are selfish, or with the whole thing with the cheaters, yes, you actually learn how to be selfish when you first got here because you were catered to. And you inadvertently really wasn't trying to be selfish. It's that the individuals made you that way because they catered to you. And as human beings, we adapt, we learn. This is why the youngest thinks that they and the ones that are older than the youngest don't like the youngest, because they feel like they get away with certain things, because natural human instinct is, oh, okay, once I saw this happen, well, then I can do it again. Oh, well, look, that does work. Oh yeah, I'll keep doing it. This is what people do. This is why criminals continue to be criminals, and they keep doing certain things because they haven't gotten caught. They try. They will continue to try you, or try the situation, and while it's a benefit, until they get caught, then there's some remorse. But this is also why I say people don't make mistakes. No, they make decisions. They don't think it's an issue until you get caught. Other than that, they were fine with the decision that they made. If you say something, you purposely said it. You had intentions of saying it. Now, maybe you didn't say it in such a way that where they could actually understand it, but you had intentions and made the decision to say it is what you said. Which is why I never understand why people say, oh, I'm made to apologize. No, they meant what they said. Just like everything on this thing I said. I meant what I said. If you're offended, oh well, that's not my problem. It's how you interpreted it. That's just pretty much how it goes. And like, oh, that's mean. Come on, man. If you're over 30 years old, you ought to know better. You simply ought to just know better. You ought to know how this goes. You ought to know how life goes. Whatever comes out of your mouth is generally what you meant. It wasn't a mistake, because let's be real here. We learn this all at a young age. Mistakes happen when you know something and you miscalculate. That's a mistake. Most of the things that we decide to do is just a flat out decision. And as we go through life, there are certain things that just simply happen on the fly that we didn't know. So it couldn't have been a mistake because we didn't fully know. Mistakes happen when you know something. When you're taught 210 plus 210 or 211, and you put down there 423, somehow or another you weren't paying attention, and like, oh, okay, well, that's wrong. No, that should have been 420. How did you get 423? Oh, I wasn't paying attention. I don't know why I put the 3 right there. I wasn't thinking. When you learned addition and you learn addition and you learn subtraction and you moved on to multiplications and you turn around and put 423, that's a mistake. That wasn't really a decision, because you had all the ample time in the world to do that problem, as opposed to things happening instantly within a conversation, instantly while we're moving around. Those are different. That is different. Now I'm going off to a whole nother subject, but I don't want to go off into that. Anyway, as far as the whole cheaters deal go, man, people are going to cheat. If they've been through something, they're going to cheat. If they've been hurt, they're going to cheat. This is why I vet people. This is why I do my due diligence in getting to know people and digging out, because it's going to tell me. See, this is the kind of stuff that needs to be taught. So when you get in actual relationships, that you know how to move. And then you're wondering why, oh, okay, this person cheating on me. You didn't do your due diligence. Did you find out beforehand what they've been through? Because if they've been through something, there's that possibility looms a whole lot larger with a person who's been with somebody as opposed to somebody who's a virgin, don't know nothing. The virgin person is not going to be the one more subjectable to cheat, because they have no experience, they have no hurt. But a person who's been hurt, they're going to go looking for someone else to ease the hurt, as opposed to treating it. They're not going to treat it. They're not going to treat it the way it's supposed to be treated. They're going to go ahead and treat themselves to go to somebody else and think that that other person is better. That's what they're going to actually do. This is what happens. And we actually need to teach each other, and those who are in the know, that is like, all right, let's learn who these individuals is before we start jumping in bed with people and say we're in a relationship. Because once you jump in that bed with that individual, everything from that point on changes. Now emotions are now being engaged. And once those emotions start to be engaged, if you're not in control of your emotions, as I always say, you're going to have a problem. The worst thing that you can do in this life is not have control over your emotions, because emotions will make you make decisions hastily, and it will cause a problem. And that is where a lot of issues come into play, because decisions were made emotionally. And once you start getting into that bed, emotions go all over the place. They then become unlocked to the utmost. Regardless of what you think, even if you just messing around with somebody, let somebody else come around and they start having a relation with them. They start sleeping around with them. Then you see far and far less of them. You're going to feel some type of way. Well, it may be on this level, it may be on that level, but you're going to feel some type of way that it's going to cause your next reaction or your next move. Whether you cut them loose, keep fooling around with them, or whatever it is you do, your emotion is going to chip in some kind of way. Just all depends on the magnitude of it and how deep your hurt is, or how deep it is if you decide that you allow yourself to be involved, which means then you now safeguarded yourself. But then if you're safeguarding yourself, that means you've been hurt somewhere down the line, and you just don't want to go down that Pandora's box and open where that true hurt come from. That also, once again, one of my main components I talk about, time. Time happens for so long that it's developed in who you are, and you're now covering it up. But with that being said, it's your boy Will My Craven. I've gone as long as I want to go with this whole topic. The other little thing took me a little farther off than I wanted to be. But it's your boy Will My Craven. Hit that like, share, subscribe. Gladly appreciate it. And of course, have a great week. Have a great day. Have a great year. Maximize your time. Do your due diligence. Learn to get control of your emotions. Make the most of your life. Stay in control. It's your boy. Be easy.